Hello viewer, and welcome to my buyer's guide of Far Cry 5. Understand that this isn't really a review. I'm not here to tell you whether or not this is a good game or a bad game. I'm here to assist people who are on the fence about buying this game. They've done a little bit of research, but they're still not sure if they're going to get this. And so I want to assist them by doing three things. Number one, I want to attempt to identify what kind of gamer would enjoy this game, and what kind of gamer wouldn't. And hopefully you'll know which gamer you are. Number two, I want to make sure you have the right expectations going into this game, and then make sure that you don't have any wrong impressions going in. The other thing I'm also going to do is make comparisons to previous games in the series, namely Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 3, for people returning to the series. The reason I'm not comparing this to, say, Far Cry 4 or Primal is because, unfortunately, I have not played any of those other games. Now, before I get into this, I want to make my biases very clear so that you guys know where I'm coming from, so you can make an informed decision about whether or not you really want to trust anything I'm saying. Number one, I'm not really a Far Cry fan. I'm really just a Far Cry 2 fan. I love Far Cry 2. I, made a whole Let's Play series and a half about Far Cry 2. And I was not really a big fan of Far Cry 3, however, the next game in that series. They made a lot of changes to the series that I stupidly didn't see coming, and so when I played Far Cry 3, I came into it with all the wrong expectations, and so that really soured my experience with Far Cry 3. That being said, because of how wildly successful Far Cry 3 was, when I came into Far Cry 5, I was like, okay, this is gonna be like Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 was super popular, they're gonna keep making the game like Far Cry 3, so I'm gonna expect this to play a lot like that. Also, I usually play games like this at whatever difficulty is above normal, but I played this game, Far Cry 5, at normal difficulty so that I could get through most of the content in a timely manner. That being said, my last bias is that unfortunately I haven't actually beaten the game. I put in 34 hours so far, just about, and have gotten through what feels about like 2/3 of the main story, along with a handful of the side quests. The reason why I'm making this video anyway is two things. Number one, quite simply, I don't have time to do it. I don't have time to beat the game. This is just a really long game, and it's keeping me from doing other things and getting other things done, and getting this done as well. Number two, this guide is purely meant to cover the core single-player gameplay experience in a very generalized way. I won't be discussing the story, so there's not going to be any spoilers, no, don't worry about that. Nor will I be covering multiplayer. I won't be going super in-depth with some of the game mechanics either. This is a very generalized sort of overview. So with all that out of the way, let's get into this with the first question. What kind of gamer would or wouldn't be into this? If you've never played a Far Cry game before, but you're part of that niche who prefers single-player, first-person shooters, the Far Cry series as a whole is something you might want to look into. I really think of the Far Cry series as one of those few first-person shooter series that are still trying to deliver a substantial single-player experience, which is in no way a slight to multiplayer shooters. I mean, like, I love multiplayer shooters. I put in so many hours into Overwatch. I don't know how many hours I've put into Overwatch, but it's probably a lot. But I still really love the single-player shooter experience. Also, if you want a very dynamic, non-linear experience, I think the Far Cry series has always delivered that, but Far Cry 5 in particular seems to do that a little extra. The game gives you a lot of free reign in what missions you want to do, what loadout you want, how you want to approach any given scenario. Like, you can go in all stealthy, like, Solid Snake or something like that, or you can just go in like a wild man. You can go in there like Rambo and just shoot up the joint, And in the middle of a fight, Sometimes, like, I don't know, a bear will just come out of nowhere and just wreck shop, you know? Now, I know that this may come as a surprise to some, but, you know, some people aren't really into that. Some people prefer a more linear, controlled game with a strong sense of direction, like Call of Duty, for instance. I personally know some people who were not into games like the Elder Scrolls or the 3D Fallout games for that very reason. Like, they just picked up the game and, like, they just got bored after like 10 minutes. So if you're one of those people, Far Cry 5 is a little bit tricky to recommend. That being said, the game does clearly state what your missions are, what your main missions are, which direction you need to go, and you're given so many like fast travel points to get to these places as quickly as you'd like, so it's not really that bad. Also, if you liked Far Cry 3, you'll probably like Far Cry 5. And you probably already have the game, let's be honest. This is such a superfluous point, I don't even know why I'm making it. It plays very similarly, it feels very similar to Far Cry 3. However, if you're like me, and you liked Far Cry 2, and did not like Far Cry 3, know that this game isn't like the great return of the Far Cry 2 style gameplay. Now, I personally liked Far Cry 5. I liked this game. But I spoke to someone online not too long ago who liked Far Cry 2, but called Far Cry 5 trash, so this is not going to please all the Far Cry 2 fans. Keep that in mind, please, if you're a Far Cry 2 fan, and you didn't like Far Cry 3. This may not be the game for you. Chances are this might not be the game you want at all. Now, number 2. What expectations should you have coming into this game? If you're looking for something on the short side, this game is not that. To reiterate what I said before, I put 34 hours into this game, and I still haven't beaten it. And there's just so much content, there's so much side quests as well. There's a lot to do in this game, on top of the main missions and the side missions. Now, you're probably thinking, particularly the younger viewers, hey, isn't that like a good thing for a game to be long? Don't you want more, bang for your buck? Not necessarily. The thing is, with some of the older audience of gamers out there, they just don't have that much time to put into games. They got their 9 to 5s, maybe they got like a significant other that's nagging them to spend time with them. They got like this network of friends they gotta go drinking with. I don't know, maybe they're part of a gym or a book club. I don't know, maybe they got like their backlog of like TV shows, I don't know, Stranger Things, Doctor Who, I don't know what people are watching these days. There's just, people don't have as much hours in the day as they used to, especially when you get older. It's just the thing that happens. Not to everyone who gets older, but just, some of the audience out there, some of the audience. And so some people just might want a game that'll last them a good 9 hours, maybe even less, and this game isn't really that. Also, don't expect this to be like the Elder Scrolls. This is an open world game, but it's by no means the Elder Scrolls. That being said though, there's actually, a nice bit of life in this game's world. Seeing some of the things that NPCs do or say, or just seeing like the wildlife running around, finding like a nice little hiking path, and even just seeing like the fittingly occasional NPC driving down the countryside road. All these little touches, sometimes they make the world feel kind of believable for me, honestly. Compared to Far Cry 3, I actually had a lot more fun exploring the world, or just going for a drive. Hunting does make a return in this game, and you can also go fishing as well, but it does feel slightly less integrated in the experience this time. In the previous Far Cry 3, hunting was needed for you to increase how many guns you could carry, or how much ammo you could carry, money, etc., which all felt very important to giving you an edge in the game, especially at the harder difficulties. In this game, however, you unlock all that storage capacity stuff via unlocking perks through earning perk points that you spend on these perks like in a role-playing game. Hunting and fishing, however, can net you a lot of cash, which you can burn through pretty quickly from buying new weapons or vehicles, or even just restocking supplies. Lastly, let's make a few comparisons between this game, Far Cry 5, and Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 3. And this is where I'm gonna get like really subjective. Like this entire thing is probably subjective, but this section in particular will be rather subjective. I mentioned previously that I was a big fan of Far Cry 2. Far Cry 2, I just loved that game, but not so much Far Cry 3. There were a couple of reasons, but to keep this simple, there were, let's say, 2 major reasons. Far Cry 2 had what I felt was just fantastic lighting. Oh my god, the lighting in Far Cry 2, it was just so good. Oh god, oh yeah, it was the best. It was just one of the greatest things I had seen at that time when that game came out. Oh god. Far Cry 3, however, it didn't really seem to have this for me. Maybe it's because I played it on console, I played it on the Xbox 360, but overall, I found the visuals to be just pretty underwhelming. Oh, here it is. However, in Far Cry 5, the lighting is back and it is good. It looks so good. Ah, yeah. I mean, like earlier I mentioned that it was nice to drive around just to experience the world, but that lighting adds just a little more extra oomph to that motivation to just drive around and to just look at the world. Now, the second reason that I prefer Far Cry 2 over Far Cry 3 is a little bit more complicated. Also, if you haven't played Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 3, this might be a little hard to follow, so I apologize for that if you haven't. In Far Cry 2, if you cleared an enemy outpost and drove far away enough, the enemies would respawn back at that outpost eventually. I like this mechanic because I really enjoyed the combat, particularly the outpost fights. And so I just wanted more people to shoot, basically. But this mechanic was removed in the next game, in Far Cry 3. In Far Cry 3, once you cleared an outpost, not only would the enemies stop respawning there, but the random enemies that you would encounter in the surrounding area would also disappear, sort of in the surrounding territory. Combined with the underwhelming visuals, this really reduced a lot of my motivation to actually like drive around and look around the island as opposed to fast traveling. In Far Cry 3, I always fast traveled. I barely drove from point A to point B in order to get to a mission. Now, to be fair to Far Cry 3, the reason why this mechanic was taken out was because that was a major complaint actually for Far Cry 2. People didn't like that in Far Cry 2. They didn't like that enemies constantly kept respawning. Also, to be fair once again to Far Cry 3, if you look in the options menus, you should find an option that allowed you to actually reset all the outposts that you cleared. The tricky thing about this thing though was that like it kind of seemed awkward to do this each time that you cleared an outpost. And also, cleared outposts served as your fast travel points. So by restarting all the outposts, you get rid of all your fast travel points. Well, most of them. In this game, however, Far Cry 5, it seems like they attempt to strike a balance between the two games that I like. If you clear an outpost in Far Cry 5, they do remain cleared, but you still get into random fights along the road in the surrounding territories around the outpost. You will eventually clear enemies out of certain territories, but it does take a while. So that about does it for this buyer's guide of Far Cry 5. If you have any more sort of suggestions or like little comments or something that you think would help potential buyers get this game, or something that they think they should know before going into this, or something they should like be aware of, feel free to leave a comment. Absolutely, you know, whatever helps. Also, if there's anything that you disagreed with this video, feel free to leave a comment about that as well. I think that would be also very important for people to know who are watching this, who are thinking about getting Far Cry 5. I've made a bunch of other Far Cry 5 videos as well, so check those out, you know, shameless plug. Or my Far Cry 2 Let's Play series. That was the Far Cry 2 series was a bit old, so you know. Anyway, yeah, that wraps it up for now. See ya, folks. Bye-bye.